Wait, don't scroll. If you are a man and you still feel the need to explain yourself to be understood, to be accepted, or to be respected, this message is for you. Most men lose power not because they are weak, but because they talk too much when silence would have made them dangerous. They explain their decisions, they justify their boundaries, they defend their actions, and every time they do that, they unknowingly give away authority. A man who explains himself too much is a man who is asking for permission to exist. And today, we're gonna dismantle that mindset completely. If this is the first time you're watching a video from this channel, you've done yourself a favor. This is the Mind Forge, a place for men who want clarity, discipline, and control over their lives. If you want to sharpen your mindset, strengthen your presence, and understand power on a deeper level, hit the subscribe button now, because what you're about to hear is not for everyone. Now listen carefully. When a man stops explaining himself, something uncomfortable happens around him. People feel it before they understand it. Conversations shift, energy changes, respect either rises or resentment reveals itself. And that's the point most men don't understand. Explaining yourself is not communication. Most of the time, it's fear disguised as logic. Fear of being misunderstood, fear of losing approval, fear of conflict, fear of standing alone. But power has never belonged to the man who needs agreement. Power belongs to the man who is rooted so deeply in his decisions that he doesn't feel the urge to convince anyone. Think about it. The men you respect the most, truly respect, are they always explaining themselves? Or do they move with quiet certainty? Do they announce their boundaries, or do they live them? Do they argue their value, or do they let absence teach the lesson? A man who stops explaining himself is not rude, he's resolved. And resolution is intimidating to people who survive on emotional leverage. Here's the truth most men are never told. The moment you over-explain, you shift the power dynamic against yourself. Why? Because explanations place you in a lower position. They suggest uncertainty. They suggest doubt. They suggest that your decision is negotiable. When you explain yourself, you're subconsciously saying, I'm open to being corrected. But when you stop explaining, you're saying something much stronger without words. I've already decided. That single shift is enough to change how women respond to you, how men test you, and how people treat your time. This is why silence is misunderstood. Weak men think silence means submission. Strong men know silence is control. When a man stops explaining himself, weak people panic. They start asking questions. They push for reactions. They try to provoke clarity, not because they care, but because uncertainty makes them uncomfortable. Silence removes their leverage. And this is where most men fail. They break the silence too early. They feel the tension. They feel the pressure. They feel the urge to clarify, soften, or reassure. But the man who has mastered himself understands something critical. Not everyone deserves access to your reasoning. Some people only want your explanation so they can dismantle it, manipulate it, or use it against you later. When you stop explaining yourself, you expose intentions. Those who respect you will adjust. Those who benefit from your insecurity will resist. And resistance is information. This is why men who stop explaining themselves suddenly see clearer who's with them and who isn't. Because explanation creates noise. Silence creates truth. Now, let's talk about something uncomfortable. Many men think they are explaining themselves to be fair, but fairness is often an excuse to avoid confrontation. You don't owe fairness to people who don't respect your boundaries. You owe clarity to yourself. A man who knows who he is does not argue about it. He does not negotiate his standards. He does not justify his discipline. He does not defend his goals. He moves, and people either keep up or fall behind. This is why when a man stops explaining himself, relationships change. Some end, some improve, some reveal their true nature. And that's not a loss, that's purification. If you're still watching at this point, it means something in this message is hitting you. Comment the word silence below if you understand that silence is not weakness, it's leverage. Now, let's go deeper. A man who explains himself too much is still living in reaction mode. He reacts to opinions. He reacts to expectations. He reacts to emotional pressure. But when you stop explaining yourself, you step into response mode. You choose when to speak, You choose what deserves energy. You choose who gets access to you. That's when you stop being predictable. And unpredictability, when grounded in self-control, is power. This is why silence makes people curious. They start filling the gaps themselves. And most of the time, they project strength onto you because confidence doesn't explain, it acts. But understand this clearly. Stopping explanation does not mean becoming cold or arrogant. It means being intentional. You speak when words add value. You remain silent when words would cheapen your position. This discipline alone separates men into two categories: those who chase validation and those who command respect. And here's something most men are not ready to hear. If you need people to understand you before you move, you're not leading, you're following. Leaders move first. Explanations come later, if at all. Now imagine a man who applies this consistently. At work, he doesn't over-justify his decisions. In relationships, he doesn't argue his boundaries. In life, he doesn't announce his next move. He simply acts. And when he speaks, people listen because silence has made his words valuable. This is the man people can't manipulate. This is the man people think twice before disrespecting. This is the man whose absence speaks louder than arguments. And this is only the beginning. When a man stops explaining himself, the first thing that breaks is the illusion people had about controlling him. Most people don't actually want clarity. They want predictability. They want to know how far they can push you, how much resistance you'll give, and where your limits bend. Explanations make you predictable. Silence removes the map. This is why the moment you stop explaining, people start acting differently around you. They hesitate, they observe, they become careful. And that reaction alone tells you how much power explanation was giving them before. Psychologically, humans are wired to seek patterns. When you explain yourself, you give them patterns they can anticipate. When you go silent, the pattern disappears and uncertainty takes over. Uncertainty is uncomfortable. People don't like not knowing where they stand with you. That discomfort forces them to reassess you. Suddenly, you're no longer the man who justifies. You're the man who decides. And that shift triggers three reactions in people. The first reaction is respect. These are the people who were never trying to control you in the first place. They simply wanted clarity. When you stop explaining, they don't panic. They adapt. They give you space. They adjust their behavior. Respectful people respond to strength with alignment, not resistance. The second reaction is anxiety. These are the people who benefited from your explanations. The ones who used your words against you. The ones who twisted your intentions. The ones who relied on emotional access to you. When explanations disappear, their leverage disappears with it, so they start probing, asking questions, creating drama, trying to pull a reaction out of you. The third reaction is hostility. These are the ones who were feeding off your uncertainty. They feel threatened by your silence. So they try to provoke you, label you, or frame you as cold, arrogant, or distant. Not because you changed, but because they lost control. And this is where most men fold. They feel misunderstood. They feel accused. They feel the urge to explain just this once. And the moment they do, the power resets back to the other side. That's why silence must be disciplined, not emotional. Silence is not about punishment. It's about self-respect. When a man stops explaining himself, he is saying, "My decisions don't require consensus." And that message hits deeper than words ever could. Now let's talk about why this affects women differently. Women are highly attuned to emotional certainty. They feel direction before logic. When a man explains himself too much, it signals emotional instability, not weakness, but openness to influence. When he stops explaining, his emotional center becomes harder to access. That creates polarity. Suddenly, she's no longer leading the emotional direction. She's responding to it. She starts wondering, what is he thinking? Why isn't he reacting? Did I lose influence? And curiosity replaces comfort. This is why men who stop explaining themselves often notice women leaning in more, asking more questions, testing more, seeking reassurance indirectly. Not because the man is playing games, but because emotional certainty has shifted away from her. And again, this only works when the silence is grounded. A silent man without direction is just avoidant. A silent man with purpose is commanding. The difference is internal clarity. If you stop explaining yourself, but internally you're confused, anxious, or seeking validation, people will feel it. Silence only amplifies what's inside you. That's why inner discipline matters more than outer behavior. Now listen carefully. A man who stops explaining himself must also stop arguing with reality. He doesn't debate outcomes. He doesn't fight consequences. He accepts results and adjusts. This is where real maturity shows. Most men explain themselves because they want to be right. Strong men don't care about being right. They care about being effective. Effectiveness doesn't need applause. This is why powerful men rarely defend their reputation. They let consistency do the talk. Over time, silence backed by action creates an image no explanation can compete with. If you're still watching this far, it means you're not just consuming content, you're studying behavior. Comment the word discipline below if you understand that silence without discipline is useless, but silence with discipline is dominance. Now, let's address a dangerous mistake. Some men hear this message and think it means becoming emotionally unavailable, dismissive, or passive-aggressive. That's not power, that's insecurity, pretending to be strength. Real silence is calm. Real silence is neutral. Real silence is controlled. You don't withdraw emotionally. You withdraw explanations. You don't punish. You reposition. You don't disappear. You become selective. This is why when a man stops explaining himself properly, his time becomes expensive. His presence becomes intentional. His words become rare, and rare things are valued. People start listening not because he demands attention, but because he doesn't chase it. And chasing attention is the opposite of authority. Now think about this. How many arguments in your life happened because you felt the need to explain something that didn't need explaining? How many times did you lower your position trying to be understood by someone who had already decided not to understand you? Silence would have saved you energy. Silence would have protected your frame. This is why men who master silence age differently. They don't burn emotional fuel on unnecessary conversations. They conserve energy. They observe more. They speak less. And when they do, it lands. And here's the truth most people won't tell you. The more you explain, the more people believe you're uncertain. The less you explain, the more people assume confidence. Assumptions shape behavior. People treat you based on what they think you are, not what you tell them you are. Silence lets them assume strength, and strength attracts compliance without force. When a man stops explaining himself, something subtle but powerful happens inside him first. His nervous system recalibrates. Most men don't realize this, but the habit of over-explaining is tied to anxiety. It's the anxiety of wanting approval, wanting peace at any cost, wanting to be seen as good or reasonable. Explanation is often a stress response. Silence, when done correctly, is regulation. When you stop explaining yourself, your body learns that it doesn't need to panic every time there's misunderstanding. Your chest loosens. Your thoughts slow down. You stop rehearsing conversations that haven't even happened yet. You stop fighting imaginary arguments in your head. That internal calm is what people feel, not the silence itself. This is why some men can be quiet and still command attention, while others go silent and get ignored. One is regulated, the other is withdrawn. A regulated man doesn't rush. He doesn't fill space out of fear. He allows moments to breathe. And here's the part most people miss. Silence forces others to reveal themselves. When you explain yourself, you control the narrative. When you stop explaining, you expose intentions. People start talking more around you. They over-justify, they over-clarify, they reveal insecurity, manipulation, curiosity, or respect without you asking. Silence turns conversations into mirrors. You begin to see who respects boundaries and who only respects access. This is why silence is a filter. Now let's talk about conflict, because this is where men panic the most. When a man stops explaining himself during conflict, the dynamic shifts immediately. Instead of debating details, the conversation moves to behavior. Instead of words, outcomes take center stage. You're no longer saying, "Let me explain why I did this." You're silently saying, "This is what I chose. Interpret it however you want." That doesn't mean you become cold or dismissive. It means you stop negotiating your self-respect. In relationships, this is especially powerful. Most relationship tension escalates because one person keeps talking while the other keeps reacting emotionally. Explanations stack, emotions spike, respect erodes. But when a man stays calm and reduces words, the emotional temperature drops. There's nothing to push against. This often creates a pause, and pauses are dangerous for people who rely on emotional momentum. That's when reflection starts. That's when accountability begins. And that's when attraction either strengthens or collapses depending on the foundation. Now here's a truth that will challenge you. Not everyone deserves your silence. Silence is not for people who communicate honestly and respectfully. Silence is for people who weaponize your words, dismiss your boundaries, or demand emotional access without accountability. Strong men don't go silent with everyone. They choose when silence is appropriate. That choice is what makes it powerful. Because when you selectively stop explaining yourself, people notice the pattern. They realize he speaks when it matters. He doesn't argue. He doesn't chase clarity. He moves on decisions. That reputation builds quietly and spreads faster than words. This is why men who master silence often don't need to announce boundaries. Their presence enforces them. Now, if you're still here, you're not watching casually. You're studying behavior that most men never slow down enough to understand. Comment frame if you're starting to see that silence isn't absence, it's structure. Let's go deeper. A man who stops explaining himself also stops oversharing his inner world. He doesn't narrate every thought. He doesn't seek emotional reassurance out loud. He doesn't turn every feeling into a discussion. This doesn't mean he suppresses emotion, it means he processes it privately. Processing privately builds emotional independence, and emotional independence is rare. Most people outsource emotional regulation. They talk until they feel better. They explain until someone agrees with them. They vent until they're validated. A man who doesn't do this becomes an anchor. People feel steadier around him even if they can't explain why. This is where leadership energy comes from. Not dominance, not control, but emotional gravity. Now, let's address something important. When you stop explaining yourself, some people will accuse you of changing. They'll say, "You're not like before. You used to be more open. You're acting different." And they're right. You changed because you grew. Growth always threatens access. People who benefited from the old version of you will resist the new one. That resistance is not your responsibility. Here's the rule you must internalize. You don't owe familiarity to people who don't respect your evolution. Explaining yourself to them is a form of self-betrayal. Silence, in this case, is self-alignment. Now imagine this long-term. A man who consistently stops explaining himself doesn't just change how others see him, he changes how he sees himself. He stops doubting decisions after making them. He stops replaying conversations. He stops shrinking to keep peace. His self-trust grows, and self-trust is magnetic. People can feel when a man believes in his own judgment. They adjust accordingly. This is why, over time, a man who stops explaining himself becomes harder to manipulate, harder to rush, and harder to disrespect. Not because he's aggressive, but because he's solid. And solidity is intimidating to chaos. When a man stops explaining himself long enough, something else begins to change the way he chooses when to speak. This is where most men get it wrong. They think silence means saying nothing. In reality, power comes from selective speech. A man who has stopped explaining himself doesn't talk less because he's afraid. He talks less because he's deliberate. Every word carries weight because it's not used to chase understanding, it's used to express direction. That's why when he finally speaks, people listen. Think about it. The man who explains everything sounds like he's constantly adjusting his position. The man who speaks rarely sounds like he's stating a conclusion. Conclusions feel final. Explanations feel negotiable. This is the psychological shift people respond to. When you stop explaining yourself, conversations stop revolving around convincing others and start revolving around responding to you. The flow reverses. And here's a crucial detail most men overlook. Silence trains people how to treat you. If every time someone challenges you, you explain, you teach them, that pressure gets access. If every time someone misunderstands you, you clarify, you teach them that confusion earns attention. If every time someone disrespects you, you justify, you teach them that disrespect is negotiable. But when you pause, when you let moments sit, When you allow others to deal with the discomfort of not having immediate answers, you teach them restraint. They begin to approach you differently. They choose words more carefully. They hesitate before pushing boundaries. They seek clarity with respect, not entitlement. That's training without a lecturer. Now, let's talk about the hardest moment for most men, when silence is misunderstood. There will be times when someone assumes your silence means guilt, weakness, or indifference. This is where emotional discipline matters. A man who stops explaining himself must also accept that not everyone will interpret him correctly, and that's okay. Trying to correct every misunderstanding is exhausting and unnecessary. Here's the rule. If someone truly wants to understand you, they'll ask respectfully. If they don't, explaining won't help anyway. This realization alone saves years of wasted energy. And here's something even deeper. When you stop explaining yourself, you stop living reactively. You stop shaping your behavior around other people's emotional states. You begin acting from principle instead of pressure. That's maturity. That's what separates men who are respected from men who are merely tolerated. And yes, this changes how women perceive you too, but not in the way most people think. It's not about manipulation. It's not about games. It's about emotional gravity. A man who doesn't rush to explain doesn't rush to please. And a man who doesn't rush to please is perceived as having options even if he never mentions them. Options are attractive because they signal choice, not need. Neediness talks. Security observes. Now, let's be honest for a moment. If you stop explaining yourself overnight without inner work, you'll feel uncomfortable. The silence will itch. You'll want to fill it. You'll want to justify. You'll want to fix tension. That discomfort is withdrawal. You're withdrawing from validation. And just like any withdrawal, the urge passes if you don't feed it. Each time you resist the urge to explain, you strengthen self-control. Each time you let silence stand, your confidence compounds. You begin to realize, I don't collapse if I'm misunderstood. I don't lose myself if I'm not validated. I don't need agreement to stand firm. That realization is dangerous in a good way, because once a man reaches that point, he becomes emotionally unmovable, not cold, not arrogant, unshakable. And people feel that they might not be able to articulate it, but they sense a boundary they can't cross easily. That's presence. Now, if you're still watching at this point, you're not here for entertainment. You're here because something inside you recognizes this truth. Comment discipline if you understand that silence isn't about ego, it's about self-command. There's still one more layer we haven't touched yet, and it's the most important one. Stopping explanation isn't just about how you deal with others, it's about how you deal with yourself. When you stop explaining yourself outwardly, you also stop constantly explaining yourself inwardly. You stop replaying decisions. You stop justifying your choices to an imaginary audience. You stop asking, was I wrong? Every time there's tension. Instead, you ask a better question. Was I aligned? Alignment replaces approval. And alignment is where real confidence is built. When a man stops explaining himself, the real test begins when pressure returns. Because pressure always comes back. People will poke, they'll question your silence, they'll bait you with emotions, they'll test if the old version of you is still available. This is where many men relapse. They hold silence for a while. Then one accusation, one emotional moment, one misunderstanding pulls them back into over-explaining. They undo weeks of growth in minutes. So let's talk about how a man holds silence under pressure. First, understand this clearly. Silence is not passive. Silence is an active stance. You are not doing nothing. You are choosing not to react. Reaction is emotional slavery. Response is authority. When someone presses you and you don't immediately explain, your nervous system will feel heat. Your heart rate shifts. Your mind starts building arguments. This is your old pattern begging to return. The key is this: you don't suppress the urge, you observe it. You let the urge exist without obeying it. That's discipline. And discipline is felt long before it's spoken. Here's what happens psychologically in the other person during this moment. They expect resistance or explanation. When neither comes, their brain loses footing. Humans rely on predictability. When you remove it calmly, the dynamic tilts. They begin to question themselves instead of you. Did I misunderstand? Did I push too far? Is he unbothered or already decided? Uncertainty replaces dominance, and uncertainty always favors the calm one. Now let's correct a dangerous misunderstanding. Stopping explanation does not mean you never communicate. It means you stop over-communicating. You still speak, but only when speech serves clarity, not defense. Here's the difference. Weak speech explains to reduce tension. Strong speech clarifies to establish direction. One comes from fear of loss, the other comes from certainty of self. That's why a man who has mastered this doesn't argue in circles. He makes statements, short, grounded, final. He doesn't convince. He declares, and no, not arrogantly, calmly. A man who stops explaining himself doesn't say, "Let me tell you why I did that." He says, "This is what I decided." No apology unless he truly violated his own code. No justification unless it adds value. No emotional pleading to be understood. This changes relationships permanently. Friends stop testing you. Women stop pushing boundaries. Even family members adjust their tone. Not because you demanded respect, but because you no longer negotiate your position. Now let's talk about something subtle but powerful. Pace. Men who explain too much speak fast. They rush. They fill space. Men who have stopped explaining speak slower. They pause. They allow silence between words. That pace signals internal control. People subconsciously mirror it. Conversations slow down. Emotional intensity drops. You become the regulator of the room. This is leadership without titles. And here's the part most men don't expect. When you stop explaining yourself, some people will leave. Not because you did something wrong, but because they fed on your availability, your reassurance, your constant emotional labor. Let them go. Silence filters your environment. It removes those who only respected you when you were accessible and compliant. What remains are people who respect presence, not performance. And if you're honest with yourself, that's what you want. If you're still here, comment control, because this isn't about dominance over others. It's about command over self. When a man stops explaining himself, there's an immediate effect on his relationships. Friends, colleagues, women, everyone starts recalibrating. They notice that you no longer respond to pressure, to judgment, to expectation. And when people notice that, they begin to measure their own behavior against you. Here's the nuance most men miss. It's not about withholding communication. It's about curating it. You speak when it matters. You invest your words where they carry weight. You respond to energy, not demand. This creates a magnetic tension. People naturally want to fill the void you've created, but only in ways that respect your boundaries. They chase because they feel compelled to, not because you've begged them to understand you. Women sense it intuitively. A man who doesn't explain every thought, every action, every feeling demonstrates a form of emotional independence that is rare. It signals that he values himself over the need for constant validation, and that is profoundly attractive. Now, let's talk about the internal shift. When you stop explaining yourself, you stop obsessing over others' interpretations. You stop replaying conversations in your mind, trying to justify every choice. You begin to occupy mental space that was previously wasted on defending your existence. This is where self-respect becomes visible. Others can feel it even if you don't speak it. You stop asking permission to exist in your truth. And that is the ultimate form of authority, silent authority. Here's a simple exercise to reinforce this. Next time someone challenges you or questions a decision, pause. Don't rush, don't explain. Hold your position internally. Let them adjust. Let the silence do the work, because silence speaks louder than words ever could. And here's a warning. People will test this. Not everyone respects boundaries naturally. Some will try to provoke explanations to draw you into arguments to see if you're real or just pretending. Stand firm. Your calm refusal to justify yourself is your strongest statement. If you're still watching, you've already begun to internalize this. Comment gravity to acknowledge the shift in understanding the moment you recognize that your presence is enough. Subscribe to our channel for more videos like this, and click the link below to watch the continuation of the video and deepen your understanding of silent power. When a man stops explaining himself, he reaches the ultimate stage of control over his life and relationships. At this point, words are no longer his currency, actions are. Every movement, every choice, every decision becomes deliberate, intentional, and magnetic. People sense it instinctively. There's an aura of calm authority that cannot be faked. The final truth is simple. You cannot control how others perceive you, but you can control how you operate. Explaining yourself constantly gives away power, dilutes your presence, and signals dependence on approval. When you remove that compulsion, you reclaim control. You project confidence not through what you say, but through what you don't need to justify. Women, friends, colleagues, they all respond. They respect the boundaries you've drawn and feel the weight of your quiet confidence. Those who cannot align with your standard naturally distance themselves, leaving only those who truly value your presence. Here's the practical step to internalize this. Act first, speak later. Make decisions, set boundaries, pursue goals, and let the results speak for themselves. The fewer unnecessary explanations you give, the more your life communicates competence, self-respect, and authority. Silence becomes your strongest tool, and your life becomes proof of your worth. People chase significance, and you become a living example of it. Remember, this isn't about arrogance, it's about mastery. Mastery of self, mastery of presence, mastery of influence. When you move like this consistently, respect follows naturally, attraction follows naturally, and power becomes a byproduct of your disciplined choices. So take this seriously. Start today. Hold your boundaries. Speak with intent. Act with purpose. And never feel the need to justify the life you've chosen to live. Subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. Click the link below to watch the continuation of the video. Leave a comment with gravity if you're ready to own your presence. And hit the like button to support the channel. The journey to mastery begins with this step.